This is a very well attended event here today. We've got over 130 people attending the event. Public services in general and councils in particular, we're at a particular turning point in terms of funding, so that's going to continue for the next 4 or 5 years. So what councils and other public services need to do is think about different ways of delivering those services, and that is not only different ways of delivering services but different models of service delivery as well, which may not necessarily be controlled by the council. They may have some oversight role, but they may have some basis in the community or be transferred to community councils. The programme itself has been designed to get a range of views from a number of different perspectives. There's going to be the perspective from local government officers and practitioners themselves. How does it feel at the coalface? What are the kind of questions they need to start asking to go down that journey as to whether they're going to produce services in-house or whether they're going to spin them out, whether they're going to contract out or outsource services or further devolve them back down to the community. So there'll be that perspective. The second perspective will be a legal perspective, because there are legal hurdles involved in setting up new joint ventures and in commissioning services from other providers. Finally, I think we'll get a perspective, quite an interesting perspective, from an academic, Tony Boved, who's a professor up at InMaGov at Birmingham University, and we'll get an idea from him about just the kind of governance structures you need, what the kind of how you need to engage with your community, and how you need to really focus on outcomes.
We need to keep strategic direction whilst giving more power to consumers. Quite clearly, as I've said, people will expect direct control of services, and people will want different things because they're individual people. How do we maintain a strategic strategy within that context? Maintain long-term commission plans when the commissioning bodies will change. We talked about the reality in terms of organisational change in organisations. And we clearly need to keep, to some degree, bold in our planning when we know there will be change in organisations. And working across agencies with different funding cycles is clearly there, and quite clearly the potential to work with the voluntary sector, the third sector and cooperatives is clearly important there.
So it's really important that members are on board and you take them with you. And that does require organisationally a level of education and understanding, not just for the organisation, but also for your staff and for your citizens. So it can mean that there are fundamental culture shifts and approaches that may actually be needed if you really kind of want to make a significant change. And linked to that, of course, are leadership behaviours, leadership styles. Because it may be that historic command and control type models won't work for some of these new innovative solutions. Alongside the kind of organisational impact, though, the reason we're doing this is because we want improved care for people and for our communities. So you kind of do have to take a step back and say, well, this is where we want to be organisationally and strategically, but actually, where's the evidence for our service users and what makes the real difference for them? Being a local authority and being a creature of statute, you do always have to consider public sector powers, corporate design, whatever the model may be, procurement issues that may arise, staffing issues, implications for transfer of assets and where they will go, who will own them, what will be the value, potential state aid implications associated with all of those things, and of course the ongoing contractual relationship management depending upon whatever the solution is. I've seen cases where clients have come to me and said, we want to do it this way because if we do it that way it makes the procurement problem go away. And you kind of think, that is fine, but actually is that where you want the business to be in 5 years' time? Does that sit with where your objectives are? So procurement issues are important, they do have to be thought about, but actually it shouldn't ultimately drive the decision you're making.
Know your customers. Who are we commissioning for? It's not difficult to find out. Just walk down the streets when it snows. Yeah? We're commissioning for car drivers, not pedestrians. Yeah? We're commissioning for people who go to work in offices, but not in schools, because the schools are closed. Yeah? It's not actually all that difficult to find out who we're commissioning for. And you know what? A lot of the time, to me at least, but then I'm biased, I'm Irish, Midlands. You know, to me at least, biased, it sucks. I cannot square who we appear to be commissioning for on the streets with the documents. Somehow there seems to be a gap between what we claim and what we actually do. We now do realise that a lot of things that people do don't have to be this way, and if they behave differently, our services could be smaller, they could be cheaper, they could be more effective. So behaviour change is part of our commissioning responsibility. Co-production, getting other service users and other members of the community to do some of our tasks could make our job much easier and much more effective. Commission services would then be demand minus the changes brought about through behaviour change and co-production. And those commission services would then be tested against those outcomes. That's the kind of model I want to suggest, and I want to say that's not the way it looks in most authorities where I work with the commissioning team at the moment.